Welcome back to the Light True Crime. This is recap number 4 from day 5 of the David Burke Preliminary Hearing, and I'm going to resume from where we left off. We're going to be going into the closing argument of the people. If you haven't yet, please go back to watch recaps 1, 2, and 3 from today. And as a reminder, I'm just kind of reading off my notes from everything that we heard from inside of the courtroom. So let's get straight back into it. They start off, obviously, with the crime of unaliving. And as a reminder, that's just the terminology we need to use on these platforms. They said that malice can be proven by circumstantial evidence. And they also mentioned that especially, let's say, intimate relationships with underage minors don't have other witnesses involved in them. They also threatened to expose relationship Celeste threatened to expose the relationship, but she was deceased within 20 minutes of arriving to the home, implies that David was waiting for her. Other defects were pointed out from the medical examiner, but it pointed to 2 injuries that were really the cause of death out of simply a caution because the body was so poorly decomposed that he really couldn't give insight as to anything else. They also then went that there was plenty of time for David, the defendant, to destroy evidence, and the time of decomposition of the body, which also like naturally destroyed some evidence. And all of this wound up being in his favor in a case like this. Again, reminding that this incident occurred on the evening of April 22nd, 2025, allegedly, and we're talking about, an investigation not happening until September 2025. So they went on to talk about Celeste, the victim, being penetrated by a sharp object twice. Again, trying to use the right terms here. And they would assume something like this, there would be vocalization, that there would be noise, and that through an incident like that, David did not call 911. His friends, they said maybe he calls his family, but he didn't call for any type of help. They said that once the threat is made, it appears that he put a plan into motion. When she ran away from home, he made a plan as well for that. Now, the prosecution went on to state that the defense has tried to dirty up the victim and reminded that this is a 13-year-old child that they were trying to do this to. Then they went to talk about the lying in wait charge. They were talking about it being a surprise attack. He waited for her Uber arrival. He knew it was coming. He ordered it. Then he's saying the gate was open and the door unlocked means that, again, he was waiting for her. They said that a minor here was sexually abused for many months, groomed, was being gaslit, and said that he was saying to her that this was smex that she asked for and went along with it, that he went along with it. Again, this is to that gaslighting aspect. They said even after reported missing and understanding what her true age was, if there was any confusion before, that we knew she was then 13, that he continued seeing her in coordination with other adults. The victim thought that she was going to see him and talk to him when she went there that evening. That was what she anticipated. She would go there and see him often from Ubers and take that ride, which could be an hour and a half to 2 hours, have intimate relations, and then go home. So for her, having an Uber to the home, something that was occurring on that evening, is not something that would have been out of the ordinary for her, that she wouldn't have expected to have this. And this is what we're talking about, lying in wait situation where she wound up losing her life that evening. Then they were talking about discussing the financial gain aspect of it. They did reference some Supreme Court cases. One of them was California 1898 Supreme Court case. I think it was 190.2. I got to verify that, but that's what I wrote down. And they talk about how an avoidance of loss is included in this. Otherwise, if you don't allow loss, versus the other concept of having for profit or gain, right? So this person no longer being here, or if she was there, and let's say she's there and she's threatening to release this information, leak this information about, inappropriate relationship, that he would lose out on these finances. It's not just about how much he's going to gain, it's about the impact of what he has to lose. I hope I tried to contextually clarify that well enough. There was another note of a Supreme Court case that it only needs to be a motivating purpose, and not knowing if it was actually, I think I wrote realized. They said that all special circumstances are interconnected in this case, that he needed to silence her because it would ruin his career, which they noted it has. Now they went into the portion of the witness unaliving to silence her, and they clarified in their closing argument that Celeste didn't need to have been involved in any type of pending investigation. I also noted during this time, David was continuously making notes on his notepad. They said that the Riverside sheriff called David after they had tracked him down back in that February 2024 timeline and said that the sheriffs in LA would be coming to make a welfare check. So he had advance notice to this whole situation. When law enforcement shows up, he easily lies to them on body cam about barely knowing her, about the age and everything. And prosecution went on to say that he was advised that she was 13 at that point in time. But it was also clear that he knew that because he had her middle school photo and missing poster at that welfare check. They said from this point on, you can verify that there's no confusion of knowing what her age was. He kept having these sexual relations with her. Said David kept trying to ensure that she didn't become pregnant, that she was using a Flow app, that the SMEX was on non-ovulating days. He was taking all those precautions. Detective Byers also had testified about the condition of the body in the Tesla and went on to talk about numerous evidence was not moved there was numerous evidence that the Tesla wasn't moved or driven by anybody but David since July 29th. They stated that he likely parked around the corner so that the smell wouldn't link back to his garage and home. Detective Byers also talked about, she mentioned Detective Byers' testimony and the unknown blue source fragments and how the missing fingers due to the name and the evidence, they were never found due to extensive cleanup. Because again, they were able to put those blue source fragments, some of them, not all of them were there, but they're talking about how he cleaned up the car, his Tesla, and cleaned up the garage. He had time to do these things. They talk about the iPhone 15 and David's contained CSAM, and we're talking about the fact that he stated he had numerous aliases and phone numbers, and he used those to make purchases, items never found involving the shovel, a chainsaw, and they know that he contemplated incineration due to the fact that there was a burn box. They spoke to the fact that Celeste was found in a body bag that he purchased. He had her name tattooed on his finger along with the tattoo. They try to say that the phone didn't belong to the defendant, to David, but he's also being charged with child abuse, right? Sexual abuse from the contents of that phone, because you can't negate when it's photos and videos of him involved in the act, even though they want to say that the device is just a device. He's being charged because of the contents of it. Now, they talk about how that abuse was beyond 3 months and 3 instances that these encounters occurred, which meets, the scope of everything that they need to in those charges. I talk about the sexually graphic text messages. The sexual relationship continued beyond the end of 2024, and he continued to use her for smex, even if they were, quote, broken up. He kept saying that he wanted a future and a family to a child. And the back and forth led her to, right before death, led her to threaten leaking information and expose it. The prosecution went on to say that Celeste expected the Uber because David had done it so many times before, that Celeste thinks maybe they drink, they have smex. However, within 20 minutes, she was deceased. David turns off her phone. He starts fabricating texts to her phone. He immediately drives to Santa Barbara to discard of evidence or even her body. David wants to get rid of her, goes on with life, and next month orders various items to dismember her. They said that he destroys evidence over the next couple of months, and he went back to the same location numerous times. They talked about how David decided to leave her body to rot and turn to liquid while he went on tour. They then went on to speak about the Caltrans worker who found her ID in the area where the Tesla had said to go on these trips. They spoke of the DNA evidence in relation to the forensic testing in the Tesla and the garage, and spoke about how a lot of this was still found even 5 months later, due to the fact that it took 5 months because David was hiding the body in the Tesla. It still indicated that her BLOOD had been in the vehicle. There was indications that he cleaned up the vehicle and the house after the homicide date. Now, they went on to reference the inflatable pool and said that that was made there to stop the BLOOD from gushing as he dismembered her, that the pool smelled like laundry detergent and had a dryer sheet in it. Why? Because, again, he was trying to clean up the incident that occurred, the crime that occurred. They talk about the blue star that was used underneath the black exercise mats in the garage that showed BLOOD underneath those mats, even though he tried to clean. They spoke about the larger pieces of the blue fragments from the body that physically fit back into the pool. So connecting both body and the pool thing, they were in different locations afterwards, how it's like a puzzle they connected, as well as a piece of black leggings that was in the black trash bag in the garage. However, that piece of fabric was so decomposed and soiled by that point, they weren't able to directly connect that back into her original leggings. Prosecution spoke about Interscope Records and the financial aspect, how David had the ability to earn a minimum of $13 million and a maximum of $19 million. They said that all allegations are proven beyond a standard, and at this point, they rested when it came to their closing argument. So what happened next was the defense had a chance to respond to what the prosecution just said. The defense did respond, and their response was bringing up the lying in wait, that it has to be a position of advantage and a substantial amount of time waiting. They were trying to say that there's a rare avoidance of financial loss, and they were trying to cite case law saying that the cases aren't close to the facts of this case, and they were still trying to hone in on intent, saying that everyone knew about the relationship, friends, family. They were all aware outside of outside numerous hotel stays as well, and that the people she threatened to tell, they already knew. So they were saying there's an absence of evidence as well to plot this homicide. At this point, both sides, the prosecution and the defense, were done with their closing arguments, and they both submitted. The judge then handed down her ruling on this whole preliminary hearing and the outcome of it after 5 days. So the judge wanted to talk about how the whole point of the preliminary hearing is that this relies on probable cause, where there's a strong suspicion of guilt of the accused, and that this is a low standard at a preliminary hearing. She did reference Thompson versus Superior Court in regards to this. And just contextually for comparison, it's basically the thought of when you're in trial and you have a jury, right? Typically you're looking to say, you know, that there's no reasonable doubt when you charge somebody with their crime. This is not the case in a preliminary hearing. That's why they're saying it's a probable cause situation. She spoke to financial gain as seeming to be the big issue between both the defense and the prosecution as to where they were bringing up points against one another. And she had some case law. She was saying People versus Parker in 2022 had an expectation of financial gain shown, and that there was also in People versus Duwong regarding lying in wait, so that true intent can be concealed by actions or conduct. She mentioned another case law in 2023, People versus Brown, where people must show to take person by surprise. So again, regarding that lying in wait. There was another one, I think it was People versus Park, and saying that in that one, they say that there's no particular time required in the whole lying for wait. Then she went on to speak about the witness unaliving special circumstance and said that it does not have to be sole or predominant purpose of unaliving. After this, she made a very clear statement. The people have met the burden for all charges and special circumstances enhancement. That was the final decision. She said that there would be no bail set, and David would remain in the custody of the sheriffs. Originally, the next part is setting an information arraignment date. Originally, they were going to do August 10th, 2026, because it's within David's rights to have this arraignment within 14 days after the preliminary hearing wraps up. However, his defense did ask for later on the calendar, August 28th or 31st. And the judge explained to David his rights and that he would need to waive that right and delay the time, which he did. So they landed on Monday, August 31st at 8:30 a.m., which is when there will be the information arraignment held. Now, they were talking about this time waiver. So from then is when you start counting like the 0 of 60 or 0 of 90 days for going to trial. And I know some people were saying that this is going to go to trial within 90 days. It's not. It could, but it's likely not, because that countdown doesn't start until the information arraignment happens. Again, that's why initially it's within 14 days for the arraignment. Then from there, they have a countdown for trial. Typically, there is a within 60 days on these felony charges, but they discuss, and I don't want to be incorrect here, but my context was, my understanding, again, I am not a lawyer or an attorney. I'm nothing. My kitten. A time waiver that can be done and also kind of extend it to 90 days for that trial, so 0 of 90. But you have to understand that just like the preliminary hearing, you can have delays come up. You can ask for delays, say that you're not ready within that date. So you're not guaranteed to have this trial happen, say start before the end of the year. We don't know that that's going to happen, but we just have to look at the step-by-step in the process. And I think people should look at it that way. The next step in the timeline is going to be that information arraignment hearing, which will be Monday, August 31st. So let's focus on that. And from there, then we will find out more information about the plans for trial. So take it one step at a time. So that's everything that there is to report on the preliminary hearing of David Burke. And our victim, as a reminder, is Celeste Rivas Hernandez. So if you want more updates on this case, because I'll watch to see if there's anything filed within the court system, I will keep everyone up to date on this case. And there's many others as well that I do cover. So if you would like to follow me to hear more updates, please feel free to, but you also don't have to. But I hope that I did the best of my ability in giving you my notes from being in the courtroom. I've really tried to do my best, and I tried to write down everything word for word that I could. So please let me know if you have any questions or anything that I can clarify in the comments, and I will do my very best. But hopefully this has been helpful to provide transparency of what was going on in the courtroom. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Remember, what happens in the dark will always come to the light. Remember to stay safe and take care of yourselves. Also, give yourselves some mental and emotional breaks from this case. It's a heavy one. As always, I will see you all in the next one.